Good morning, and I'd like to call the meeting to order at 9 o'clock. It's our September the 9th Committee of Adjustment meeting. And we'll start by the adoption of the agenda. Thank you. Moved by Member Stokes, seconded by Member Bridgman. Be it resolved that Committee of Adjustment dated September 9th, 2024 be adopted. All those in favor? That's carried. Is any declarations of pecuniary interest? Yes.
It doesn't matter. Mr. Chair, it's 9F. They are neighbors and friends of mine, so I'd like to remove myself.
Okay.
And mine is the first one, which I can't remember the number of.
Actually, you're B2724, is it?
That's
It's
9A.
13 Stephen Road.
Pardon? Oh, sorry,
13 Stephen Road.
Stephen Rowe. Okay, that's 9A. Okay. Very good. And the adoption of the minutes. Moved by Member Brown, seconded by Member Grogan Green. Be it resolved that Committee of Adjustment minutes dated August the 12th, 2024 be adopted and approved as circulated. Any questions or comments? All those in favor? That's carried. Would you like to?
Good morning, everyone, and welcome. It is required that I make a few statements, then I will explain the hearing procedures. This electronic hearing is being held in accordance with Section 238 of the Municipal Act. The members of the Committee of Adjustment present are Alan Edwards, Barb Bridgman, Ruth Ann Brown, Lisa Grogan Green, and Sean Stokes. I can confirm we have quorum and that senior staff and planning staff are present. Public input on this September 9th agenda was invited at the following email address, planning@muskokalakes.ca. Now I will explain the hearing process. The planner will provide an explanation and purpose of the application, the date the notice was circulated, and planning staff's comments. All internal and external submissions have been provided to committee members by Friday, September 6th, 2024. The planner will present any submissions received after this date. The committee will hear from the applicant or the applicant's agent if they wish to add any information or to substantiate their proposal. Please provide your name, mailing address, and postal code for our records. The committee will hear from those in support of the application and those in opposition to the application. Again, please provide your name, mailing address, and postal code for our records. Presentations are limited to 5 minutes unless otherwise permitted by the committee. If you are here to speak on an application electronically, please wait until after the planner presents the relevant application to raise your hand in Zoom. If you are here to speak on an application in person, when asked, please raise your hand, and when you are recognized by the chair, please approach the podium, turn on the microphone, and remain at the podium while you state your comments for recording purposes. The committee will hear from the applicant or the applicant's agent to respond to any questions or concerns raised. The committee will then have an opportunity to ask questions, have a debate on the application, and make a decision based on the information presented at the hearing. Please note that the effect of written and oral submissions on decisions for consent and minor variances, along with the reasons for minor variance decisions, are both required under the Planning Act, and motions are pre-populated with standard wording. However, the committee may decide to add reasons and/or effects to the standard wording after voting on a decision. Motions have also been pre-populated with random movers and seconders to expedite the meeting and are automatically written in the positive to assist in completing decisions as opposed to writing out each resolution. This does not in any way mean an application is going to be approved. When it is time to vote, members shall physically raise their hand until the chair has confirmed the vote. If the vote is unclear, a verbal vote shall be recorded. This is not considered a recorded vote. It must be noted the chair has a vote on each application and can participate in the discussion. There is a 20-day appeal period from the date of the decision. Building permits are not available until after the appeal period and if no appeals are received. Lastly, please take down the pink notice signs that were posted on your property to advertise today's meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Ward. And the first application is B 2724, and that is Ms. Beamish.
Thank you, Chair Edwards. The first application to be heard is consent application B 2724 ML in the name of BURNETT. The retained lot is known municipally as 1805 Peninsula Road, Unit 37. I would direct committee's attention to the consent sketch on page 32 of the agenda package. The purpose and effect of the application is to create a right-of-way for access to a neighboring lot. Notice of this public hearing under the Planning Act was circulated 14 days in advance of this meeting, and 4 comments have been received to date. Comments were received from Nick Schneider, the township's chief building official, Tim Sapko, the township's manager of public works, and planning staff from the District of Muskoka, all stating no objection to the application. Comments were also received from Doug Holland, the township's fire prevention officer, stating the calculated fire response times. Staff have prepared a detailed report for committee's consideration and have recommended that the application be approved, subject to the standard conditions of consent, and that the location of a propane tank on site be confirmed and relocated to be compliant with applicable zoning provisions if necessary. Staff have no further comments at this time and are happy to answer any questions from committee.
Thank you very much, Ms. Beamish. Is the applicant or applicant's agent here wishing to speak on this?
Good morning to the committee. It's Cameron Hughes. I'm the agent for the applicant on this application.
Yes, go ahead. We need your name, address, and postal code, please.
Cameron Hughes at 280 Manitoba Street, Bracebridge, Ontario, P1L 1S5. I'm here to answer any questions that the committee may have. Otherwise, I think it's satisfactory to just rely on the staffing report.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there anyone else here wishing to speak in support of this application? Anyone in opposition to this application? Are there questions from the members? Moved by member Bridgman, second by member Stokes. Be it resolved that consent be granted for application B 2724 ML BURNETT, provided the following conditions are fulfilled. 1, a satisfactory registrable description deed of the severed lot right away be submitted to the township along with a registered copy of the reference plan. 2, that confirmation be received that the township is satisfied that the retained lot is satisfactory for on-site sewage disposal, that any problems identified with the existing sewage system be corrected to the satisfaction of the township. Tank on-site be confirmed and relocated to be compliant with applicable zoning provisions if necessary. Any questions or comments? All those in favor? That's carried. The next application is B 2824 ML, and that's Ms. Spears.
Thank you, Chair Edwards. The next application to be heard is consent application B 2824 ML in the name of 5021901 Ontario Inc. The subject lands are accessed from 1805 Peninsula Road, which is a private road also known as Riverdale Road. The retained lot in this application does not have a municipal address assigned. I would direct committee's attention to the consent sketch on page 46 of the agenda package. The purpose and effect of the proposed application is to sever a portion of land and add the severed lot to an abutting lot, the benefiting lot. This application constitutes a change in common lot lines. No new lots are being created. This is a resubmission of a previous consent approval, B 0220 ML, which was approved on September 16th, 2020, but it had lapsed as 2 of the conditions of consent were not completed within the required time limit. Notice of this public hearing under the Planning Act was circulated 15 days in advance of this meeting, and 4 comments have been received to date. Comments were received from Tim Sopko, the Manager of Public Works, and Nick Snyder, the Township's Chief Building Official, both stating no objection to the application. Comments were received from the District of Muskoka, stating that the subject property is located within the waterfront designation of the Muskoka Official Plan. The Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry has identified the entire subject lands as Stratum 2 deer wintering habitat. The Muskoka Official Plan contains policies that state that any development or site alteration in Stratum 2 habitat should conserve valuable conifer thermal cover, feeding areas, and movement corridors. Lastly, a review of the species occurrence data provided by the Natural Heritage Information Center has also confirmed that the subject property may contain habitat for threatened and restricted species. Therefore, it is recommended that the Ministry of Environment, Conservation, and Parks be contacted to ensure that any redevelopment will not have any negative impacts on species at risk or their habitat. And lastly, comments were received from Douglas Holland, the Township's Fire Prevention Officer, noting the calculated fire response time is 16 minutes and 33 seconds, which is outside of the NFPA rural response time objective of 14 minutes. And as such, it is prudent to subject developments to additional design requirements beyond the minimums in the building code. It is also recommended that the Fire Smart Homeowners Manual be consulted to understand how to for committee's consideration, and have recommended that the application be approved subject to the following. That a satisfactory registerable description deed of the severed lot together with any required rights of way or easements be submitted to the township along with a registered copy of the reference plan. That a consent agreement under section 5126 of the Planning Act be entered into with the township and registered on title requiring the benefiting and severed lots to be transferred together. That subsection 3 of section 50 of the Planning Act applies to any subsequent conveyance. Staff have no further comments at this time and are happy to answer any questions from committee. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is the applicant or applicant's agent here wish to speak on this? Good morning, Mr. Bonner.
Good morning, Chair Edwards. Steve Fauner, Northern Vision Planning Limited, 109 Meadow Heights Drive, Bracebridge, Ontario, P1L1A4. I'm here this morning representing the Ontario Inc. number. It's actually Jay Hennick. He also owns waterfront property immediately to the south of the abutting lot. So he's the owner. It's planned that the property be transferred to the abutting lot in the name of Deborah Tuckner. And in fact, it's the Tuckners that have retained my services. So I will quickly go through my PowerPoint presentation, and thank you to staff for seeing the property and seeing their way through and recommending approval. So I'll just be very quick on this. Next. It was mentioned by Kaylee that this is a previously approved consent. It lapsed. We're not sure exactly why. John Hiley was never given instructions to complete the survey, so there was a breakdown in communication at the time. Next. So this is the severance sketch. I just wanted to point out on the left, it may be a little difficult to see, but there's a previous property immediately to the north of this that was cut out of the Ontario Inc. lands and was conveyed to the Taylors. So this sort of completes and runs directly into this property. Next. This is just a little bit more of a close-up view. Next. So this is starting the property at the south end, looking towards actually the abutting property and the driveways that they have on the left-hand side. The severed lot is a little bit on the right here. Next. And this shows there is a little small wetland area. Now this has been zoned EP1. And that small area there is beyond it, it's high and dry. There's just a small wetland area. Next. This is just moving a little farther down the road. The abutting lot is on the left, and you can see that it's high and dry on the right. Next. And this is looking into the severed lot. Again, this is a high and dry area. Next. Again, similar location. Next. And this is the dwelling on the abutting lands. And if you look closely on the left-hand side of the photograph, you can see Lake Joseph. It faces out onto Lake Joseph. Next. And this is just the driveway up into the Tuckner property. Next. So really, there's very few policies in either official plan related to lot additions. The abutting lot is a building lot today, and it'll be enlarged, so the status of that lot is not changing, and the retained lot is vacant. Next. There was a previous zoning bylaw that was passed in conjunction with the previous consent application, and it rezoned a portion of the retained lands to EP1, defined the severed and abutting lots as one for planning purposes, and limited the permitted uses on the severed lot. Next. And since the severed lot's beyond 200 feet from the lake, it does not increase development potential on the abutting lot. Next. So I won't go through all the conclusions. I like to think it's fairly straightforward. It's a resubmission of something that was approved in 2020. And I'm here to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else here wishing to speak in support of this application? Anyone in opposition? Other questions from the members? Yes.
Kaylee, could I get you to just reread the comment about the environmental considerations?
Yeah, so the District of Muskoka stated that the property is located within the waterfront designation of the Muskoka official plan. The Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry has identified the entire subject lands as stratum 2 deer wintering habitat. The Muskoka official plan contains policies that state any development or site alteration in stratum 2 habitat should conserve valuable conifer thermal cover, feeding areas, and movement corridors. And lastly, a review of the species occurrence data provided by the Natural Heritage Information Center has also confirmed that the subject property may contain habitat for threatened and restricted species. Therefore, it is recommended that the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks be contacted to ensure that redevelopment will not have any negative impacts on species at risk or their habitat. But staff would confirm that there is no development proposed on the.
Okay, thanks. But is that something that should be reflected in the resolution when it's passed?
Yes, Mr. Scott.
Thank you, Chair Edwards. I just reiterate a couple of points. Essentially, this is an application that has been previously approved by the township. There was a concurrent bylaw amendment that went along with the original application. It had actually restricted the uses on the severed lot to conservation and open space recreation only. So I think with respect to the district's comments concerning deer wintering habitat and species at risk, I don't think there's a very large potential or a risk here of impacting deer wintering habitat or species at risk, given that A, there's no development proposed on the property at this time, and B, the severed lot, the uses on the severed lot are restricted to somewhat, I would say, passive conservation and open space recreation uses. So I think we're good. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, anything else? Anyone else? Okay. Moved by member Grogan Green, second by member Brown, be it resolved that consent be granted for application B 2824 ML That's 5021901 Ontario Inc., providing the following conditions are fulfilled. One, that a satisfactory registrable description deed of the severed lot, along with any required right-of-ways or easements, be submitted to the township, along with a registered copy of the reference plan. Two, that a satisfactory consent agreement under section 5126 of the Planning Act be entered into with the township and registered on title, requiring the benefiting and severed lots to be transferred together. And three, that subsection 3 of section 50 of the Planning Act applies to any subsequent conveyance. Any questions or comments? All those in favor? That's carried.
Thank you, committee. Have a great day.
Thank you. The next application is B 2924, and that's Ms. Crowder.
Thank you, Chair Edwards. The next application to be heard is consent application B 2924 ML in the name of Antonides. Sorry, one moment. We're just working through some technical difficulties.
Okay.
Thanks.
Not a problem.
Okay, thank you. The subject lands do not have a municipally assigned address. However, to provide some locational context, these lands function as a waterfront backlot parcel separated from Henshaw Lake by Clearwater Shores Boulevard and waterfront development. I would direct committee's attention to the consent sketch on page 87 of the agenda package. Since the circulation of notice materials, a revised consent sketch has been submitted, which slightly alters the proposed lot configuration and proposes a right-of-way. The revised consent sketch is shown on the screen. Thanks. The purpose and effect of the application is to create one new lot for residential purposes. The application also seeks to grant a right-of-way over the severed lot in favor of the retained lot. Notice of this public hearing under the Planning Act was circulated 15 days in advance of this meeting, and 4 comments, no objection to the application. Comments were received from Tim Sopko, Manager of Operational Services, stating that it is recommended that severance approval should be subject to confirmation from the Operational Services Department of the availability of an entrance permit for both the severed and retained lots. Lastly, comments were received from Douglas Holland, the Township's Fire Prevention Officer, stating that the calculated fire response time is 13 minutes and 48 seconds based on the average shoot time of the fire department in the last 36 months and a travel distance of 3.1 kilometers from the fire station. The Fire Smart Homeowners Manual should be consulted to understand how treatments to the property influence wildfire spread. Next slide, please. Staff have prepared a detailed report for committee's consideration and have recommended that the application be approved subject to standard conditions of consent. Staff have no further comments at this time and are happy to answer any questions from committee. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Crowder. Is the applicant or applicant's agent here wishing to speak on this?
Not today.
No, fine. Okay. Is there anyone else wishing to speak in support of this application? Anyone wishing to speak in opposition to this application? Are there questions from the members? Moved by member Stokes, second by member Grogan Green, be it resolved that consent be granted for application B 2924 Antonis, providing the following conditions are fulfilled. One, that a satisfactory registral description deed of the severed lot, together with any required right-of-way or easements, be submitted to the township, along with a registered copy of the reference plan. Two, the confirmation be received that the township is satisfied that the severed and retained lots are satisfactory for on-site sewage disposal, and that any problems identified with the existing sewage system be corrected to the satisfaction of the township. Three, that the availability of an entrance permits be confirmed with the township operational service department for the severed and retained lots. And four, that cash in lieu of parkland be dedicated to the township in the amount of 5% of the assessed value of the severed lot or the entire lands, whichever is less. Any questions or comments? All those in favor? Carry. Okay, we'll call you when we're finished. And the next application is A 6124. And I'm sorry, I didn't mark down who's.
Miss Beamish.
Pardon?
Miss Beamish.
Ms. Beamish, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Edwards. The next application to be heard is minor variance application A 6124 in the name of FORTIN and MACCALLUM. The subject lands are known municipally as 13 Stephen Road. I would direct committee's attention to the submitted site plan on page 108 of the agenda package. The purpose of the application is to relocate an existing land-based dwelling, construct a dock addition, and construct a one-story boathouse addition with a rooftop sun deck. Notice of this public hearing under the Planning Act was circulated 12 days in advance of this meeting, and 8 comments have been received to date. Comments were received from Tim Sopko, the township's manager, from Douglas Holland, the township's fire prevention officer, noting the calculated fire response time and recommending that the Fire Smart Homeowners Manual be consulted to understand how treatments to the property influence wildfire spread. Letters of opposition were also received from area residents Chris Stokes, Deborah Stokes, and Sandra Morris and Daniel Foucher, stating concerns with the circulation process, the potential to set precedents, and potential negative environmental impacts to the Indian River and the surrounding environment. Letters of opposition were also received from Philip Franks, Chief of the Wada Mohawks, and Ted Williams, Chief of the Chippewas of Rama, requesting that the application be deferred and that the notice be recirculated. The proposed variances are summarized as shown on the screen. This table was included in the circulation materials and can be found in the agenda package. Please note that it has come to staff's attention that there was an error in our digital mapping circulation database, which impacted the circulation of the notice for this application. As a result, staff are now recommending that the application be deferred and that the notice be recirculated. Staff have no further comments at this time and are happy to answer any questions from committee.
Thank you very much. And that, is there applicant or applicant's agent here wishing to speak on this?
Haley Gilmore. I'm the agent from Decoding Group, 3 Armstrong Point Road, Port Carling, Ontario, POB 1JO. And I would just like to say we do want to defer this application due to the circulation process. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. But I have to ask, is anyone else here wishing to speak in support of this application? No, anyone in opposition to this application? Yes, you may speak.
Oh, hi, my name is Deborah Stokes. I live at 19-1 Stephen Road. And my address is Port Carling, POB 1JO. Thank you very much to the members of the Committee of Adjustment and Township staff for hearing me out regarding the proposed development at 13 Stephen Road. I outlined my concerns in depth in my letter, but I did want to address a few key points. I happened to find out about the development when I stumbled across the notice on Labor Day weekend while out walking my dogs. Written notice eventually showed up in my post office box on Wednesday, September 5th. I understand now that the application has been deferred, and that's terrific because one of my main concerns was with the process of communication. But I also wanted to indicate that I believe that there will be potential impacts from the over-densification of the shoreline on the township's natural heritage, water quality, and the small town and rural characteristics. It is located in a narrow part of the Indian River, right across from the island and Port Carling Museum that celebrate that natural heritage. I'm concerned about precedents. I'm no expert, but from the information package, zoning for this property doesn't allow for any of this. The information summary says 1 dwelling is permitted, but there are 4. It talks of significant variances to the setback and buffers, and it says they are adding another story to the boathouse and a sun deck. This property is zoned WR5-R, meaning a restricted narrow water body. According to the township zoning bylaws, section 41719, 2-story boathouses and rooftop sun decks are not permitted in properties zoned with a -R suffix. So the process and the poorly communicated information help me understand how 4 dwellings are allowed when the property is permitted for 1. Help me understand how you can have a 2-story boathouse with a dwelling and a sun deck when the zoning bylaw says that is not allowed. And help me understand how this complies with broader guiding principles of the official plan when developments can occur in a narrow water body beside a First Nations reserve across from the museum and island. And help me understand how impacted neighbors and concerned citizens can participate in the process when they are not informed and do not have time to investigate properly. As of Friday morning, 1 business day before this hearing, I know that other impacted neighbors had not been contacted, including the Chippewa-Rama First Nations and Mohawk-Wada First Nations that abut this property until I told them. And I think all of this is particularly important now with the changes to the Ontario Land Tribunal that do not permit appeals by anyone other than the applicant or the township. I fear these decisions are being made without people being properly informed and have no recourse. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else here wishing to speak in opposition to this? Yes.
Hi, my name is Sandra Morris. I'm a resident at 8 Stephen Road, Port Carling, POB 1JO. I did submit a written submission to the committee regarding this application. I think Deborah just did a very eloquent job of conveying some of the concerns around process that I would echo. Ideally, I think we would have sufficient time as residents and concerned citizens to review and understand the impacts of potential applications. And I don't think that happened in this case, so I would really support the motion to defer. I would also note, since receiving news also by the posted sign on the tree and submitting my comments on behalf of my husband and I, we did receive outreach from the proponents or the landowners, and we've had an opportunity to now walk the property, and that was very helpful. And I think that would change the nature of my comments and concerns now to a more focused concerns. So I will make use of the deferral process to adjust my comments. And so I would just really note that the nature of my concerns will shift slightly. And I wanted to flag that for the committee. And I would also echo, I just would urge the staff and committees working together to seek to ensure that timelines are respected, that First Nations are properly consulted. And I guess I would, my final comment would be, I do think going forward, it would be helpful if there was some effort undertaken to ensure that bylaws are reviewed, that we really are giving consideration to what adjustments need to be made to the bylaws to ensure that in the broader context, development is happening in a way in Muskoka that all residents feel comfortable with. So thank you.
Thank you very much. And is there anyone else wishing to speak in opposition? As this, applicants always reach out to their neighbors and explain stuff. It really helps. So thank you for that. And then we'll actually adjourn this at this time. Thank you. Oh, yes.
Thank you, Chair Edwards. I certainly agree with the deferment, but I think it might be helpful when we have two applicants here very concerned to go through some of this. I found it somewhat confusing, particularly on the boathouse part and because there wasn't a picture of the other half of the boathouse. I'm assuming there's already a sun deck on that other half of that boathouse. So that's one thing. So they're not asking for a new sun deck. It's already there, which I didn't understand because it was hard to see from the picture. But I think we could clear up a few things as in terms of the grandfathering. They have 4 dwellings on this property. They are allowed to keep 4 dwellings on this property. And please correct me, Ms. Beamish or Mr. Sharp, if I'm wrong. They're simply moving one of them back, which is an improvement from where it was. So just going forward, when you have your comments, and the dock addition length, again, length and width used to get confused for me a lot. They're not asking to widen the docks. They're just asking to have a minor increase in those docks, not to what they actually could do. So that's one thing. And then in terms of water quality, I'm trying to understand your concerns with the impact of that. I don't understand. So if you could help me with that, that would be great.
Thanks, Councillor Bridgman. So I think the issues you've just flagged speak to the process. So we received notice, as Deborah indicated, on the posted sign on Labor Day weekend. The only information, I never did receive any written information. So what I was reviewing was the summary, which I would submit as a layperson is very difficult to understand. It did not make clear that there are already 3 buildings on the site. One of them burned down. So the plan is to replace the building that had burned down. That was not clear. The rationale for the requested variances was not clear. I would humbly submit to committee that you should be asking all applicants seeking variances to have a stated rationale, that there should be an overview in writing for those of us who prefer the written word and find survey plans somewhat challenging to read. That was not available. The summary is very, very confusing to read. And so I think my comments, I can't speak for others, were based on a sense that there are, you know, as Deborah said, zoned for 1 building, requested variance to establish 4, an extension of a dock in what is a very narrow part. We weren't sure where that extension is. I would note that there are not simply 2 docks on the property, there are actually 3. And my understanding is that one of those 3 docks established many years ago was I don't want to speak for First Nations colleagues, but that there was some question about whether and why that particular dock was established. The landowners are not proposing to do anything with it, but this is already a property that has received approval for many variances. And that's a pattern that I think we're seeing with respect to development. This is now, you know, decades ago. This was in the 40s and 50s. So having had the opportunity to walk the property and see what is being proposed, my comments would now be, you know, most of my concerns were allayed. What I would flag is that the bylaw requirement to move the cottage in this particular case is, I would argue, counterproductive. It's going to require the landowners to remove a number of established trees, large trees. And it's hard to understand why that would be required by the bylaw. If we're thinking about environmental impacts, this is a circumstance, I think, in which the bylaw is going to require them to do something that will arguably be the most destructive thing that this proposal will do. So, I guess the broader comment would be, I've just gone through a process of trying to understand an application, submitting comments in good faith based on an understanding that turned out to be incorrect. And there really was not sufficient time provided. And so I would really, really urge that there be some thoughtfulness about both the timelines for these processes. And I would argue as well, what you are asking applicants to submit. We've talked to the landowners. They would have been happy to provide more information, to provide the rationale, to, you know, provide a bit of an overview. And I think that would be very helpful for those of us that are not architects, that are not planners, are not accustomed to reading site plans. We could save a lot of time. I've now spent time that I wasn't planning in my schedule to review, to develop comments, to come here today. And I think it would be much more respectful of all of us if there could be some tweaks to the process, both timelines and what you're asking applicants to submit. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Evers.
Thank you very much. Anything else? Okay. As I said, this will be deferred, and we will be getting input from the Watauga Mohawk territory and the Chippewas of Arama First Nation. So that will be sent. And I'm sure that the planning staff have listened to your comments and take them under advisement. Thank you. And the next application is A 6224, and that is Ms. Beamish.
Thank you, Chair Edwards. The next application to be heard is minor variance application A 6224 in the name of Terenzio. The subject lands are noted. I would direct committee's attention to the submitted site plan on page 125 of the agenda package. The purpose of the application is to construct a dwelling addition. Notice of this public hearing under the Planning Act was circulated 11 days in advance of this meeting, and 3 comments have been received to date. Comments were received from Tim Sopko, the Township's Manager of Public Works, and Nick Schneider, the Township's Chief Building Official, both stating no objection to this application. Comments were also received from Douglas Holland, the Township's Fire Prevention Officer, noting that the calculated fire response time is out of rural response time objectives, and that the development be subject to additional design requirements beyond the standards of the Ontario Building Code, recommending pre-planning with the fire department, and recommending that the Fire Smart Homeowners Manual be consulted to understand how treatments to the property influence wildfire spread. The proposed variance is summarized as shown on the screen. This table was included in the circulation materials and can be found in the agenda package. Staff have prepared a detailed report for committee's consideration and have recommended that the application be approved, subject to the following. 1, that a satisfactory site plan agreement be entered into and registered on title, along with securities, for the retention of existing vegetation and plantings. 2, that the woodshed not shown on the submitted site plan be removed. and 3, that the gazebo not shown on the submitted site plan be removed. Staff have no further comments at this time and are happy to answer questions from committee.
Thank you very much, Ms. Beamish. Is the applicant's agent here wishing to speak?
Yes, the applicant's agent, Adam Lenny, the permit guy, 35 Covered Bridge Trail, Bracebridge, P1L 1Y1. Through your chair, and thank you for hearing us today. We feel this is a very straightforward and modest variance. We are seeking 0.5% in lot coverage increase for a 10-year resident at this address. He wishes to enlarge to accommodate another bedroom and a bathroom. He currently has an approved septic permit for the proposed development, and we agree to all the conditions. Thank you, and I'm here if you have any questions.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else here wishing to speak in support of this application? Anyone wishing to speak in opposition to this application? Questions from the members? No? Moved by member Bridgman, second by member Stokes. Be it resolved that application A 6224 Terenzio to construct a single-story dwelling addition with a walkout basement is hereby approved with the following variance being granted. 1, to permit a maximum lot coverage of 1,966 square feet, 10.5% over the area of the entire lot. This variance is granted as shown on the plan attached to the notice of decision and is subject to the following conditions. 1, that a satisfactory site plan agreement be entered into and registered on title, along with securities for retention of existing vegetation and planting. 2, that the woodshed not shown on the submitted site plan be removed. And 3, that the gazebo not shown on the submitted site plan be removed. This approval shall remain in effect for 3 years from the date of decision. Any questions or comments? All those in favor? That's carried.
Thank you. Have a good day.
And the next application is A 6424, and that's Ms. Beamish.
Chair Edwards, the next application to be heard is minor variance application A 6424 in the name of PARADKAR. The subject lands are known municipally as 1042 Currie Street. I would direct committee's attention to the submitted site plan on page 146 of the agenda package. The purpose of the application is to recognize an as-built gazebo. Notice of this public hearing under the Planning Act was circulated 12 days in advance of this meeting, and 7 comments have been received to date. Comments were received from Tim Sopko, the Township's Manager of Public Works, and Nick Schneider, the Township's Chief Building Official, both stating no objection to the application. Comments were also received from Douglas Holland, the Township's Fire Prevention Officer, noting the calculated fire response times and recommending that the Fire Smart Homeowner's Manual be consulted to understand how treatments to the property influence wildfire spread. Letters of support from area property owners Angus and Anna McMillan and Rick Mile were submitted with the application and stated no objection to the application. A letter of objection was also received from Cassandra Ford, the abutting southerly property owner, stating objections to the application. All these submissions were included in the circulation to committee. The proposed variances are summarized as shown on the screen. This table was included in the circulation materials and can be found in the agenda package. Staff have prepared a detailed report for committee's consideration and have recommended that the application be approved subject to the following. 1, that the portion of the existing patio uncovered by an existing sun deck and as-built gazebo be removed. And 2, that a satisfactory site plan agreement be entered into and registered on title, along with securities to retain and revegetate the shoreline buffer, including the area compromising the portion of the patio to be removed. Staff have no further comments at this time and are happy to answer any questions from committee.
Thank you very much. Is the applicant's agent here wishing to speak on this?
I would, yes, please.
Okay, go ahead. Your name, address, and postal code, please.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair and Committee. My name is Debbie Vandenacker. I'm a senior planner at Planscape in Bracebridge, 104 Kimberley Avenue, P1L 1Z8. We've been supporting the applicant's minor variance application as our agents. We support the staff report recommending the approval of the application with the exception of the conditions that have been put forward. So I'd like to provide some context if I could have our presentation on screen, please, and thank you. As I think it plays an important part in our objection to the condition and the suggested solution. So on the left is a look at the street side of the property. In 1992, a zoning bylaw amendment permitted the existing development. So all of the development that you see with the exception of the gazebo in question was permitted by that bylaw. The applicants have not added to the development with the exception of having a roof over the hot tub constructed. The PARADKARs have planted this terraced yard in the rear to be vegetated and retain and use rainwater in an efficient manner, as the site is quite steep until the dwelling structure near the water. So the surrounding lots, as you can see from the image, are also undersized, developed, and urban in nature. The image on the right shows the property from a boat's view on the lake. Given the existing permitted development on site, the gazebo structure, which is the focal point of this application, can only be seen from the water at certain angles. The boathouse blocks it from the water. In case you're having difficulty spotting it on this picture, it's to the left of the boathouse, and you can just see it by that white roof line. The abutting property to the left in the photos has a 3-story boathouse that is actually the impetus for the construction of what the applicants considered a privacy roof over the hot tub. They've been working to bring their property into compliance since being notified that they needed a minor variance. So please note that you cannot even see the bottom floor of the dwelling or the patio from the water. Next slide, please. Thank you. This image is inside of the boathouse. So this appears what you see from the water, but it's not that it's meant to deceive. It's just the view appears a little bit deceiving. The proposed condition is to remove that approximate 152 square foot area of poured concrete pad. It's described to staff as a patio and it's shown in orange on this slide. Through communication, we understand that staff believe this condition is appropriate due to the cumulative impacts of development on this site. We're asking that the committee consider an alternative condition that we feel will have significantly less impact and offer a positive net gain to the site. Removing this section of patio will require cutting out a stamped and poured concrete pad that has been in existence for many years, as far as we can see back in the images. This is very much an integrated feature of the cottage and was obviously pre-planned and permitted when the cottage was constructed. The concern is that the work required to remove this creates negative impacts to the lake, as the concrete has to be removed, then the substrate layers underneath, and then topsoil brought back in, all within about 20 feet of the lake. Our alternative request is that the committee requests that the 8-foot section, I've shown it in green here, it's approximately 25 feet on the right side, and I'll just say right and left on the picture, and then in front of the gazebo, have enhanced vegetation. So that represents about 264 square feet of enhancement without risking the negative impacts of removing that concrete. I can offer as a former watershed planner that this solution does actually provide not only an aesthetic benefit, but a benefit to the lake. And given the urban nature of the area, that gain I think is appropriate on the site. The negative consequences and onerous nature of the request to remove this section of longstanding patio doesn't provide a significant gain to the aesthetics or vegetation. As you saw in the image from the water, you can't see it. It does, however, require a significant amount of earthworks within 20 feet of the shoreline. The applicants have already planted a number of trees, so the right side of this photo, and are more than happy to continue enhancing the vegetation on property. Could I have the next slide, please? So this is the condition that we would request. We request that the committee amend the suggested condition to specifically require that the vegetated buffer be enhanced through native shrubs and plantings in an area of 8 feet by 42. So that's the full frontage of the site rather than just that select area. Even though we don't feel that the gazebo has created additional cumulative development impacts, given what you can see from the water, given that it was built on an existing poured concrete patio, we do feel that this additional planting could provide a net benefit to the site. I just wanted to provide a note regarding the objection letter. Mr. PARADKAR is present and can speak to the elements.
You have about 30 seconds left, please.
Thank you. And I just wanted to let you know that if you would need to speak to him about some history of the site, he is here, and I am happy to answer any planning questions that you have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So is there anyone else wishing to speak in support of this application? Anyone wishing to speak in opposition to this application? No? Other questions from the members? Yes.
Thank you, Chair Edwards. I know we're in an urban area, but are we not still trying in urban areas to get the first 50 feet back basically in a natural state? I'm not sure who I'm asking here, Mr. Sharp. Okay.
Yes, through you, Chair Edwards, and thank you for your question, Member Bridgman. Can appreciate the applicant's concern. I believe when Ms. Beamish went out to the property, the patio is not indicated on the site plan, so we were not aware that it exists, but certainly there are official plan policies that speak to the intent of a vegetated shoreline buffer. And in a perfect case, the depth of that buffer would be 50 feet back from the lake, extending across the full width of the shoreline. I think ultimately with our recommended condition, we're envisioning that the removal of part of the patio would increase the overall area for the redevelop or for the recommended plantings. But you know, we're in the hands of committee. If you don't wish to see that part of that patio removed, you know, that's fine. But we would certainly still recommend that the area that's open and that otherwise doesn't contain the patio, that area be revegetated. And, you know, we would be looking for some tree plantings within that area, preferably conifers, just for their year-round screening capacity. So happy to answer any further questions from committee. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And yes, go ahead.
So I'm, okay, thank you for that, Mr. Sharp. On a different trajectory here, in the urban area, we don't have a limit on coverage that triggers an OPA. And so I'm wondering why, actually, in terms of the official plan, and maybe it's Mr. Pink who needs to answer that. Why don't we have that kind of a condition in the urban areas? Mr. Sharp?
Yes, thank you, through you, Chair. I think in our urban areas, provincial policies direct that the development be directed towards our settlement areas or urban centers. And as such, there's the policies envision higher densities of development within our urban areas, and our lot coverage caps in the urban centers for residential properties are based on whether the properties are serviced or not. So in this case, the property has full municipal services, and it is permitted up to 20%. I think in our waterfront areas that are serviced privately, like our waterfront like residentially zoned properties, those properties are typically zoned with private services. And there's been a long history within the township, much debated over how lot coverage allowances should be granted on those properties. So the policies are different. I think we're dealing with different designations. Thank you.
Are there any other questions? None?
Lisa has.
Okay. Sorry.
It's because it was done without a building permit. But I heard somebody say, the planners state that this is being looked at because the applicant himself or herself want to legalize everything. I just want to be clear what we mean when we say as built in this case.
Yes, Mr. Sharp.
Through you, Chair, I believe the gazebo is subject to an ongoing enforcement matter, and the gazebo does not comply with the township's zoning bylaw requirements in terms of frontage and its setback from the side yard. And as such, it's referenced as an as-built structure. It is 73.6 square feet in size. So with respect to whether a building permit is required, I don't believe that a building permit is required given the size of the structure, but it still is as built. It needs to be recognized because it doesn't comply with zoning. hopefully that helps answer your question. Thank you.
Okay. Does that answer your question?
Yes, so basically, I feel like we're helping the applicant keep this structure, which is not compliant, by asking him to remove the patio. And I think that that is a fair compromise. So I'm not really in favor of saying, no, keep the patio. I think there has to be some kind of give and take here. That's my opinion.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments?
My only comment is that I agree with not changing the recommendation of staff.
Okay, so we'll leave it in. I will read the recommendations and then we'll go from there. Here's the resolution. Moved by member Grogan Green, second by member Stokes. Be it resolved that application A 6424 PARADKAR to recognize an as-built gazebo is hereby approved with the following variances being granted. 1, to permit an as-built gazebo on an undersized lot. 2, to permit an as-built gazebo with a setback of 4 feet at the closest point of the northeasterly side lot line. And 3, to permit a maximum coverage of 1,486.5 square feet, 22.8% over the area of the entire lot. These variances are granted as shown on the plan attached to the notice of the decision and are subject to the following condition. 1, that a portion of the existing patio uncovered by the existing sun deck and the as-built gazebo be removed. And 2, that a satisfactory site plan agreement be entered into and registered on title along with securities to retain and revegetate the shoreline buffer, including the area comprising the portion of the patio to be removed. This approval shall remain in effect for 3 years from the date of decision. Is there any questions or comments on that? Seeing none, all those in favor? That's carried. Okay. The next application is A 6724 Harvey, and that's Ms. Beamish.
Thank you, Chair Edwards. The next application to be heard is minor variance application A 6724 in the name of Harvey. The subject lands are known municipally as 12 Mirror Lake Drive. Attention to the submitted site plan on page 174 of the agenda package. The purpose of the application is to demolish an existing dwelling and construct a new dwelling with an attached sun deck. Notice of this public hearing under the Planning Act was circulated 11 days in advance of this meeting, and 3 comments have been received to date. Comments were received from Tim Sopko, the Township's Manager of Public Works, and Nick Schneider, the Township's Chief Building Official, both stating no objection to the application. Comments were also received from Douglas Holland, the Township's Fire Prevention Officer, noting the calculated fire response time and recommending that the Fire Smart Homeowner's Manual be consulted to understand how treatments to the property influence wildfire spread. The proposed variances are summarized as shown on the screen. This table was included in the circulation materials and can be found in the agenda package. Staff have prepared a detailed report for committee's consideration and have recommended that the application be approved. Staff have no further comments at this time and are happy to answer any questions from committee.
Thank you very much, Ms. Beamish. Is the applicant's agent here?
Yes, he
Good
is.
morning, Mr. Brown.
Thank you, Chair Edwards. My name is Ryan Allen. I'm here assisting the Harvey family. Address 104 Kimberley Ave, Bracebridge, Ontario, P1L1Z8. Thank you, Ms. Beamish, for your summary of the application and the excellent photos in your report. The subject property is proposed to be redeveloped with the new dwelling and sun deck. The new dwelling and deck are going to be located in the existing location of the existing dwelling and in line with the front face of the existing dwelling. As a result, the existing dwelling is set back less than the 100-foot minimum, and therefore the proposed new dwelling and deck will also be setback less than the proposed minimum. However, the existing shoreline buffer and vegetation located between the dwelling and the shoreline is very natural, and it provides excellent visual screening of the proposed new dwelling. The dwelling and deck will comply with all other requirements of the bylaw. The only variance in front of the committee this morning is related to the setback of the dwelling and deck itself. Mr. Harvey is listening in on the call if you have any questions, but I think this is a very straightforward application. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Allen. Is there anyone else wishing to speak in support of this application? No? Anyone in opposition? No? Okay. Any questions from the members? No? Moved by member Stokes, second by member Grogan Green. Be it resolved that application A 6724 Harvey to remove an existing dwelling and construct a new dwelling with an attached sun deck is hereby approved with the following variance being granted. 1, to permit a minimum setback from the environmental protection EP2 zone to be 76 feet for a dwelling, and 2, to permit a minimum setback from environmental protection EP2 zone to be 73 feet for a sun deck. These variances are granted as shown on the plan attached to the notice of decision. This approval shall remain in effect for 3 years from the date of decision. Any questions or comments? All those in favor? And that is carried.
Thank you, committee. Let's hope we see some sun today.
Okay. And at this time, we'll take a 10-minute comfort break. Okay? Thank you. I'd like to call the meeting back to order. And the next application is A 6824 bracket, and that's Ms. Beamish.
Thank you, Chair Edwards. The next application to be heard is minor variance application A 6824 in the name of bracket. The subject lands are known municipally as 1052 Longhurst Road, Unit 8. I would direct committee's attention to the submitted site plans on pages 214 and 215 of the agenda package. The purpose of the application is to relocate an existing two-story boathouse with a pergola and existing second-story storage use and dock, and construct a boathouse addition. Notice of this public hearing under the Planning Act was circulated 10 days in advance of this meeting, and 4 comments have been received to date. Comments were received from Tim Sopko, the Township's Manager of Public Works, and Nick Schneider, the Township's Chief Building Official, both stating no objection to the application. Comments were also received from Douglas Holland, the Township's Fire Prevention Officer, noting the calculated fire response time and recommending that the Fire Smart Homeowner's Manual be consulted to understand how treatments to the property influence wildfire spread. A letter of support from the abutting southerly property owner, Linda BURNETT, was also submitted with the application stating no objection. The proposed variances are summarized as shown on the screen. This table was included in the circulation materials and can be found in the agenda package. Staff have prepared a detailed report for committee's consideration and have recommended that the application be approved. Staff have no further comments at this time and are happy to answer any questions from committee.
Thank you very much, Ms. Beamish. Is the applicant or applicant's agent here wish to speak on this?
Haley Gilmore, Deconing Group at 3 Armstrong Point Road, Port Carling, POB 1JO. Zoe, could you bring up the overlay? Just wanted to give you a visual of how far over the boathouse is actually moving, and this is all due to the water depths. They were measured in the spring, and where the boats are coming up was only measuring at 0.9 to 1.5 feet. So the boat motors are bottoming out. So you can see here, we're moving it over approximately 12 feet, which the side yard setbacks are now encroached. We're not widening it anymore, or the length overall is nothing is changing. And the proposed addition was already approved in the past, but we had to bring it back due to wanting to relocate the building. And if you have any other questions, please let me know. And both owners are also here too, if you have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is anyone else wishing to speak in support of this application? No? Anyone in opposition to this application? Okay, are there questions from the members? Yes.
I'd just like some clarification. Can somebody clarify for me relocation? Are we actually picking up the boathouse and moving it? Are we tearing the boathouse down and rebuilding the structure on the same foot or same way on the in a new location?
Hi, so we're tearing the boathouse down and rebuilding it. Elevations were provided. The purpose of the new boathouse is to look the exact same as the existing. We don't want to change the overall look from the water or anything at all. This boat has been here for a very long time, and the owners want people to come and think that it's the exact same boathouse. Thank you.
So then just another question, clarification from the staff report. There is a statement in there that says it does not constitute establishment of a new two-story boathouse. I have a bit of a disconnect, but I understand that it's going to be similar and the same, but I'm not sure how that can be true. It sounds like splitting hairs here, ripping down a boathouse and rebuilding a boathouse. I don't know how that doesn't constitute a new structure, but at any rate, neither here nor there. One other thing is on the site plan, I don't know if anyone else had this issue with the water depths, but I couldn't see any difference in the water depths. It was very difficult to read, and I'm wondering if somebody could point me to how this is significantly impacting the water depths positively by moving it.
Yes. If you can give us your name, address, and postal code, please.
Yes. Danny Brackett, 248167 5 Side Road in Mono, Ontario, and it's L9W2Z2. The reason we've got approval to build a new boathouse. My wife's family, 3 cottages away, have been in the bay for 5 generations, over 100 years. And we've been under 3 or 4 years of deliberations as to what to do because our boathouse is over 90 years old and it just needs a lot of repair. And, we've come to the conclusion we're just spending good money after bad. So we want to build a new boathouse, which we have an approval for with the exact same footprint and the exact same look. Because what our vision is when this is all done in the spring and you drive down Patton Bay from Windermere House, that it looks the same as it always had. We're not looking to change it or anything like that in those plans. The reason we're asking to move the boathouse 15 feet further out into the water, I don't know if one of the pictures will show, but there's a piece of the Canadian Shield or a piece of the rock that's underneath the boathouse right in front of our pergola. And the water there is only a foot deep. And in measuring our boats, and I think a common knowledge is you need about 3 feet of water. A couple of our boats are a little less than 3 and a couple are a little bit more than 3. And we have less than a foot of water right there. So moving it 15 feet further out gets us away from that piece of the shield. So that's the reason for the application. The pergola is actually built up a little bit higher, and that's because the rock underneath, it has to be built up that way. So does that answer?
Well, I hear what you're saying. Sorry. I hear what you're saying and I do understand what you're saying. I guess my issue is with respect to the actual site plan. And when I looked at it, I could see the depth numbers, but I really couldn't see how that made a significant difference because the numbers didn't seem to be dramatically different anywhere on there. So I guess that's not your fault. That's just something that I had an issue with. And I don't know if anyone else had any issue with that.
Well, if I can clarify a little bit to help you, when you measure out that piece of Canadian Shield that comes right from the shoreline all the way out, when you go out 15 feet, you're into sand. So
Okay.
you at the end of the dock, you'd have about 3 feet of water versus 9 inches to 1.5 feet, depending on the time of the year.
Okay.
So it just protrudes out past the shield, if that helps. And I'm sorry it's not shown properly.
Now, and one other thing, it says, there's another statement in the staff report that says, the potential exists for the applicants to keep the boathouse in the existing location and conduct extensive site alterations to increase the depth of the water, subject to approval from appropriate federal and provincial authorities. Is that referring to what you're referring to, which is the piece of rock, the piece of granite that's sitting in the water? And would that have to be removed in order for the boathouse to remain in the same site?
No, the boathouse could, from what I understand, we have approval to rebuild it in its current location. But we still would not be able to bring a boat into the front of the boathouse. So, the reason we want it 15 feet out is to be able to bring a boat along the front of the dock. So my understanding is no, we think we have permission right now and everything in play to rebuild it existing where it's sitting. And before we make the decision to move forward, we were hoping today we could get permission to put it 15 feet out further in the water away from this piece of bedrock.
Okay, so presumably those extensive site alterations that are referred to would be less disruptive than moving the boathouse. I guess that's kind of a question for staff.
I think that would be correct. I guess the staff would have to answer to that.
Sorry, maybe if we could just repeat the question. I'm not following what the question was.
The question is, the question is, or the comment is that in the staff report, it says that the boathouse potential exists to keep the boathouse in the existing location and conduct extensive site alterations, increase the depth of the water. My question, I guess, is that would be more disruptive than what's being requested here in terms of moving the boathouse into the environment. The amount of work that would need to be done would be less disruptive.
Yes, through you, Chair. Based on our understanding, based on the information that's been provided by the applicant and the applicant's agent, it's our understanding that the alternative would be some blasting. I think we had indicated in our report that, that in-water work would be subject to Fisheries Act requirements and any requirements of the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry. But generally speaking, it sounds like the intent here is to shift everything counterclockwise a little bit. And it sounds to me like, the reason for doing that is because of water depths. So those would be my comments. There's not a whole lot more I can add at this point. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments?
So I can step away then.
Brown. Second by member Bridgman. Be it resolved that application A 6824 bracket to relocate an existing dock, boat lifts, and a two-story boathouse with an existing second-story storage use and a trellis pergola, and to construct a single-story boathouse addition is hereby approved with the following variances being granted. 1, to permit the relocation of a two-story boathouse on a lot with less than 300 feet of lot frontage, in accordance with provisions for a two-story boathouse on a lot with less than 300 feet of frontage. 2, to permit an existing lot coverage of 5,884 square feet, 11%, within 200 feet from the high water mark. 3, to permit a maximum cumulative dock width of 59.9 feet. 4, to permit a maximum cumulative single-story boathouse width of 36.8 feet. 5, to permit a maximum cumulative second-story boathouse width of 26.6 feet. 6, to permit a maximum dock length of 93.5 feet. 7, to permit a maximum single-story boathouse length of 61.5 feet. 8, to permit a maximum second-story boathouse length of 61.5 feet. 9, to permit a dock to be set back 20.5 feet at the closest point from the southerly side lot line projection. 10, to permit a two-story boathouse to be set back 38 feet at the closest point from the southerly side lot line projection. And 11, to permit the relocation of a two-story boathouse with an existing second-story storage use. 12, to permit the relocation of a pergola trellis in the water body open space WOS zone. These variants are granted on as shown on the plan attached to the notice of decision. This approval shall remain in effect for 3 years from the date of decision. Any questions or comments? All those in favor? That's carried. And the next one is A 6924 Archdeacon, and that's Ms. Beamish.
Do you want me to leave? Can I just,
Yeah,
you want me
just-
to leave the room?
Well, just stand up. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Edwards. The next application to be heard is minor variance application A 6924 in the name of Archdeacon. The subject lands are known municipally as 1052 Cedar Rail Drive. I would direct committee's attention to the submitted site plans on pages 238 and 239 of the agenda package. The purpose of the application is to allow the demolition of an existing dwelling and sleeping cabin and permit the construction of a new two-story dwelling. Notice of this public hearing under the Planning Act was circulated 10 days in advance of this meeting, and 3 comments have been received to date. Comments were received from Tim Sopko, the Township's Manager of Public Works, and Nick Schneider, the Township's Chief Building Official, both stating no objection to the application. Comments were also received from Douglas Holland, the Township's Fire Prevention Officer, noting the calculated fire response times and that this response time is outside of the NFPA Rural Response Time Objective, recommending that the development is subject to additional design requirements beyond the requirements of the Ontario Building Code, recommending pre-planning with the fire departments, and recommending that the Fire Smart Homeowners Manual be consulted to understand how treatments to the property influence wildfire spread, and also notes that the building, with its proximity to a high fire hazard rating, should consider a wildlife assessment before construction begins to determine the impacts that construction and the wildland interface will have on one another. The proposed variance is summarized as shown on the screen. This table was included in the circulation materials and can be found in the agenda package. Staff have prepared a detailed report for committee's consideration and have recommended that the application be approved subject to the following: that the sleeping cabin, Building A, be removed as intended, that a satisfactory wildland fire risk assessment be prepared by a qualified professional and implemented to the satisfaction of the township, and that a satisfactory site plan agreement be entered into and registered on title, along with securities, for retention of existing vegetation and plantings, and to implement as necessary the recommendations of a satisfactory wildfire risk assessment prepared by a qualified professional. Staff have no further comments at this time and are happy to answer any questions from committee.
Thank you very much, Ms. Beamish. Is the applicant or applicant's agent here wish to speak on this?
Haley Gilmore, Deconing Group, 3 Armstrong Point Road, Port Carling, Ontario, POB 1JO. Thank you, Ms. Beamish, for the report. I think she pretty much highlighted everything, but I just want to make sure it's clear that we're not asking for more lot coverage. The 13.5% is already existing, so they're just looking to demolish the existing sleeping cabin and add it as an addition to the rear side of the dwelling. So the view is not from the water. The new addition will be on the back side. And all other zoning requirements will be met with the new dwelling proposed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else here wish to speak in support of this application? Anyone wishing to speak in opposition to this application? Questions from the members? Moved by member Stokes, second by member Brown, be it resolved that application A 6924 Archdeacon to demolish a single-story dwelling and a sleeping cabin and to construct a two-story dwelling is hereby approved with the following variance being granted. 1, to permit a maximum lot coverage of 4,934.8 square feet, 13.5%. This variance is granted as shown on the plan attached to the notice of decision and is subject to the following conditions. 1, that the sleeping cabin, Building A, be removed as intended. 2, that a satisfactory wildland fire risk assessment be prepared by a qualified professional and implemented to the satisfaction of the township. And 3, that a satisfactory site plan agreement be entered into and registered on title, along with securities for retention of existing vegetation and plantings, and to implement as necessary the recommendations of a satisfactory wildland fire risk assessment prepared by a qualified professional. This approval shall remain in effect for 3 years from the date of decision. Any questions or comments? All those in favor? That's carried. And the next application is A24 Arkle, and that is misplaced.
Thank you, Chair Edwards. The next application to be heard is minor variance application A 7024 in the name of Arkell. Next slide, please. The subject lands are known municipally as 1900 Mortimer's Point Road, unit number 7. I would direct committee's attention to the submitted site plan on page 255 of the agenda package. The applicant proposes to recognize an as-built screened-in porch addition to a dwelling and intends to remove 2 sheds. Notice of this public hearing under the Planning Act was circulated 10 days in advance, and 3 comments have been received to date. Comments were received from Tim Sopko, the Township's Manager of Public Works, stating no objection. Comments were also received from Nick Snyder, the Township's Chief Building Official, stating no objection, but if approved, a building permit would be required to legalize this construction and a surcharge would be applied to the permit fees. Lastly, comments were received from Douglas Holland, the Township's Fire Prevention Officer, noting the calculated fire response time is outside of the NFPA rural response time objective of 14 minutes, and as such, it is prudent to subject developments to additional design requirements beyond the minimum in the building code. It is also recommended that the Fire Smart Homeowners Manual be consulted to Next slide, please. The proposed variance is summarized as shown on the screen. This table was included with the circulation materials and can be found in the agenda package. Staff would note that variance B was circulated in error. The as-built screened-in porch addition does comply with the front yard setback requirements, so this variance will not be included in committee's resolution relating to the application. Next slide, please. Staff have prepared a detailed report for committee's consideration and have recommended that the application be approved subject to the following conditions. That shed number 3, as identified on the submitted site plan, be removed as intended. That the as-built screened-in porch addition be reduced to 188 square feet in size as intended, and that it be confirmed that no more than 1 dwelling and 1 sleeping cabin exist on the subject property. Staff have no further comments at this time and are happy to answer any questions from committee. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is the applicant or applicant's agent here wishing to speak on this?
Good morning, Chair Edwards Committee. Thank you so much for your time. My name is Leanne Arkell, and my mailing address is 519 Valley Drive, Oakville, Ontario, L6L4L9. I agree with all of staff's comments today, and I'm just here to answer any questions that committee might have for me.
Right, thank you very much. Is there anyone else here wishing to speak in support of this application? Anyone wishing to speak in opposition to this application? Are there questions from the members? Yes.
Thank you, Chair Edwards. It looks to me like there's a sleeping cabin in the boathouse. It looks to me like shed number 2, which has a lovely deck out in front of it, is potentially a sleeping cabin. And the garage on the top floor looks like it could be accommodation. On the site visit, were you able to go into all these buildings?
Through you, Chair Edwards, I was not able to, or I didn't enter the buildings upon my site visit, but I did include that as a condition as it appeared to me that it could be that way. Yes.
I understand. So through you, Chair Edwards, we're back to the, how do you How do we confirm that those are just sheds?
Yes,
Through you, Chair Edwards, I suppose it would have to be a site visit that we would schedule. Upon my visit to site, there were some people there and it was the Friday before the long weekend, so they were enjoying the day and I didn't feel like, making them open the doors for me to go inside. So I guess it would be a site visit I would have to schedule with the property owner. Thank you.
Through you, Chair Edwards, can we do that? Or maybe I should ask, can we do that? I didn't know that we could do that.
Through you, Chair Edwards, in this particular instance, minor variance is being heard under Section 45 of the Planning Act, in which case committee can impose conditions. So this is one of the conditions that staff have crafted. In the past, in certain cases, we have used this condition before, so it has been done. Hopefully that answers your question. Thank you.
Thank you.
anyone else? I just had a question on the deck that was added. I see there's a 36-inch handrail. Because of the height, is it not 42 with the building code, or is that been changed in the recent years? Yes.
Through you, Chair Edwards, I'm not an expert on the Ontario Building Code. I don't believe our chief building official, Nick Snyder, could join us this morning, but I would note that any elevations that are attached to the notice of decision would be for informational purposes. And of course, at the time a building permit is applied for, if this application is approved, the applicant would need to demonstrate compliance with the code, and the height of the handrail can be determined at that time.
Okay, no, that's fine. That's how I thought, because of the height. I know it's been in that quite a few years, but I know I understand it used to be 42 inches. So that would be fine. So do we want another site inspection to make sure that those are storage areas?
I think that's reasonable. Yes.
Bylaw should be checking them out. Yes, okay. Do you want to have that added, please, Mr. Sharp?
Through you, Chair Edwards, just a couple of points of clarification as I amend your resolution. We're going to remove the variance with respect to the front yard setback. We've confirmed that is no longer required. So apologies, we didn't catch that when we were drafting the resolution, so I'll remove that. The second point, just for clarification, the third condition that's been recommended that by staff, it says that it be confirmed that no more than one dwelling and one sleeping cabin exists on the property. Yeah, it would be township staff that would do that. So there would be a site visit as a component of that. I can certainly amend it to make it explicit, but staff would be doing that site visit. Okay. Through you, Chair, I've just added to the last condition that it be confirmed that no more than one dwelling and one sleeping cabin exists on the property through a site visit undertaken by township staff.